Hi there everyone, Lars here with another Owl House review, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And I'm going to be looking at this fantastic episode right here, Labyrinth Runners. This was a great setup episode, and honestly, in retrospect, I do believe that this episode and the previous one really are honestly setting us up for what is to come in the finale. And I think that the next episode is also probably going to be the same, as Luz and King are trying to find Ida and Lilith. But anyway, that's just a little bit of speculation right here. Let's get into the actual story as it is. So what we see here in this episode, Labyrinth Runners, we see Gus having to deal with a lot of his old personal trauma. Ultimately, that he has made a lot of bad decisions when it comes to choosing friends, and that he has done things that have just really messed things up, mostly for himself, but also sometimes for other people. He feels like he always lets them down. It feels like he drops the ball, and that he's ultimately a failure, and that all of the gifts that he has as just a very intelligent, very powerful witch, that really it's more of a curse. And that's pretty sad to see of such a wonderful, lovable guy like Gus. And unfortunately for Gus and his pity party, well, it's going to get crashed by the Emperor's Coven, as Head Witch Grey comes on in to put coven seals onto all of the students and prep them for the Day of Unity. This move is fantastically dark right here, because it shows that Bellos really is trying to steal all the magic from within the Boiling Isles, and it doesn't matter if a witch is an adult or a kid. Bellos really is the full-on Puritan witch hunter. He's going to kill them all, and I love that we get that kind of continuity coming through right here. I also just love the deception and everything that's playing out right here in this particular scene. And to that note, let me just say that I love that Principal Bump has just completely embraced the idea of multi-track students, and that he's so excited. As an educator, as the leader of the school, this guy is doing what he believes is best for his students. He experimented, he allowed Luz and some of her friends to do multi-tracks, and he's seen that they've just become more excited, they're becoming better students, and that more kids are becoming more interested in their education. And so he's allowing way more kids to do this. So we get to see Edric, he's now joining multiple tracks, and this is just great right here. This is really coming full circle with all these different kinds of events that go back to Season 1, earlier events here in Season 2. It's really great. I love the continuity within this show. That's definitely something that the Owl House needs to get full marks on, is that even small little details and side characters and background characters, all of it remains constant and consistent within this show. And again, I just kind of have to take off my hat as an educator to Principal Bump, because man, give this man an award right here. This guy is honestly the principal of the year, of the century. This man needs a raise. Well, as Gus uncovers what's really going on here, that all of the kids are going to be forced to join covens in preparation for the Day of Unity, his powers wig out. He unleashes this full-on illusion, which really impresses Grey, but it gives everyone a chance to get out of Dodge. And luckily for Gus, Hunter is there, having already been earlier discovered by Gus as he's been living there in Hexside. And this actually really makes sense for Hunter here as a character. Why would he be at Hexside? Well, it makes good sense. You see, he has been a part of the Emperor's Coven his whole life. The place that he should be is at the castle. But he can't go back there because he knows he's in trouble, and that Emperor Bellos will get rid of him. And he's not going to stay at the Owl House. Why? Because he doesn't trust Luz, or Ida, or King, or Hooty. He honestly doesn't. This comes back to what I said earlier, that really only Willow could have reached out to Hunter, because Hunter has had an antagonistic relationship with all the other heroes thus far. Hexside is where his friends are. That is where he will go, because it's the one place of any sort of semblance of safety and comfort, even if he's ashamed to show himself. And so that's why it's so good that Gus finds him and that they interact. And I love that we get to see Gus just being understanding towards Hunter. And this really reinforces that Gus is a good guy, and that he's been unduly beating himself up for things that are not his fault, but he's internalized them as his fault. And that's his journey here in this episode, is to overcome those things that have been holding him back. So now it's Hunter and Gus on the run as all the other students try to find each other, band together to fight against the Emperor's Coven. I feel like this is the Owl House's version of the Battle of Hogwarts, though not as insane because the real battle is yet to come on the Day of Unity. But this is kind of like a whole battle for Hogwarts as Hexside is under siege by the Coven. The Coven has infiltrated. The Emperor's agents are everywhere. They are trying to kidnap and force the kids to take on these Coven sigils, and it's one of the important steps towards the end game right here. So this is a very, very significant battle. Well, really everyone is trying to do their absolute best here on both sides. And the adventure that Hunter and Gus go through together is an adventure for both of them to face their own horrors, their own trauma, their own past that they are ashamed of. For Gus, it is that he's internalized his status as the victim, and in such a way that he now sees himself as the bad guy. So he has to see that, no, that's not who he is. He is the friend. He's the hero. He's the guy that everyone can actually rely on. And rely on not because, hey, he's the friend who's going to sacrifice himself for everyone, but because he is a real friend. And Hunter recognizes that. Whereas Hunter was really more close with someone like Willow, this is an episode in which Hunter can now get really close with Gus and learn from Gus and then reciprocate that friendship by helping Gus to overcome his trauma. For Hunter himself, he, in a very healthy way, confronts his own fears. His fears that he is going to be destroyed by Belos. His fears that he doesn't have a place anymore. His fear that he doesn't even know who he is without Belos. But he is willing to accept a new identity as a friend. As a friend to the kids here at Hexside, and that he is going to be a hero for them by helping them out as well. It's not him stepping in as the Golden Guard, as the hero of the Titan, as the hero of the Empire, as he would have seen himself earlier, as he was really trying hard to live up to the status as the Golden Guard. But here, Hunter's acting as a true hero for a change, and he comes in clutch, as does Gus. Meanwhile, while their personal journey is underway, Willow and Amity have to work some things out. This is, I think, one of the weaker parts of this episode right here, and maybe that's just because I'm so used now to how Amphibia handles toxic relationships being redeemed, that Amphibia took its time with multiple episodes to smooth out very toxic relationships and redeem them. For Amity and Willow, this has been a bumpy ride. Amity really did turn on Willow and bullied Willow. Willow had internalized all of that. Willow had to go on her own journey to overcome all of that and rise up to be the witch that she wanted to be. But things have been very awkward between her and Amity. And we see kind of a bad tendency right here with Amity as well to step in and be the protector, because that's how she sees herself being. She sees herself as the protector for not only Luz, but also for Willow and for other people. And that's fine, except that has led to her being kind of overbearing. And it's nice to see that Amity finally confronts that here in this episode, but it's written in such a way that it's supposed to be resolved by the end. And that was rather quick for me. It's nice to see that Amity has realized that she's got room for improvement, but it feels like that improvement has already been obtained by the end of this episode, at least in regards to Willow. And now the two of them are acting like best friends again. I mean, I get it. We're coming towards the end of the second season. There's a whole lot still to do, and the season has been on just a really fast pace from beginning to end, but I still feel like that was just a little bit rushed. Now then, as for the final battle within Hexside, I really like how this all plays out, because we get to see full on, like, all forms of magic versus all forms of magic, with the students pulling out all of the stops against the Coven putting up their own valiant fight. Like, yes, we get to see that the students do win in the end, but it is a battle of attrition. The students take a real beating. They manage to heal themselves, come right back on into the fight. They have numbers on their side, but then finally, when the Coven realizes, okay, like, we really need to pull out a trump card right here, the Emperor's Coven captain brings out the crazy abomination that Amity's father made and just wipes the floor with them. Which, again, is another thing where I'm like, I really wish that we could have seen the fight between Amity and Willow versus this abomination, because in the background we see that it took out everyone. So, like, this should be a really, really hard fight. No, it's fought off screen and ended off screen. I don't really like that. I don't really like how that played out. It's something similar to how I don't like how when Luke showed up at the end of Mandalorian Season 2 and fights against all of the Death Troopers, and he just wipes all of them out really easily. Like, it's a really cool moment, but the only thing that we have to compare that to is Mando fighting against just one machine, and that's it. We don't get to see the greater threat that these machines pose, and so as a result, they just seem less when they really should seem more, a greater threat. And it's the same here with this abomination. We know that it's supposed to be a really great threat. We see the evidence of it. It'd be nice to see how big of a threat it is in full-on combat. But we don't get that. And that comes down again to just the time and the pacing here within this episode. And I just also have to say, as far as this final battle goes, I love how the battle is not just external, but it's also internal as well. As Gus and Hunter, in the climax, must face their greatest fears and overcome them. And it really says a lot about Hedwig Grey that he cannot overcome his greatest fears. Why is that? Because the guy is so pompous. There is no way that a man like him could ever stand up to his greatest deficiencies, faults, and fears without just crumbling because he has no real backbone. By the end of this episode, things are all really being set up for the grand finale to this season, with the kids now coming together and accepting Hunter, and Hunter accepting them and revealing that he knows what, at least to an extent, what's supposed to happen on the day of Unity. And with Principal Bump saying, well, then we need to know everything that you know so we can prepare to fight. And this is really cool right here because this shows how the Emperor's influence is waning. Even though he is in complete control of the Boiling Isles and his plan is headed almost flawlessly towards its conclusion, things are coming undone. And this is a really great commentary on really all forms of dictatorship. While they're awful and horrible, they can't last forever. Something will take them down. And in this case right here, it's not just Luz and Ida bringing down the Emperor, but it's the fact that the idea of multi-track education has taken root. And that isn't just Luz and Ida. Sure, they advocated for it in their own way, but there were plenty of students beforehand who wanted to practice more magic, and it was Principal Bump who allowed it. And as everyone sees, wow, this has just improved education incredibly. The kids are doing better than ever before, and it paves the way for the kids to be unified rather than hate each other as they did in the first season where it was Coven against Coven. But now the kids can all come together. So now there is a small but viable army that is set under the help and leadership of Hunter to go and help take on Belos on the day of Unity. And just on another note for Hunter, this episode just to me helps to confirm what I've said before, that I honestly do feel like Hunter could be the main character of the Owl House. We've seen just amazing character development for him. Of all the side characters outside of the core Owl House, which is Luz, Ida, King, and even Hootie to an extent, Hunter has had the most character development, and really in a short amount of time. And his adventures are fascinating. They're very interesting. They're very revealing. And I feel like if the show had focused more on him, we could have learned more about the internal politics and backstabbing of the Emperor's Coven. What's all been going on behind the scenes within the castle? I think that we could have gotten a really, really great story of watching a villain, the Golden Guard, Hunter, becoming a hero. We knew that he was a villain back at the beginning of the season, and we've seen how from episode to episode to episode, we learn more about him, and he goes on his own adventure that leads him by the end of this episode to really becoming a hero and being set on a path now to clash against Belos and to embrace his true identity and his true potential and destiny as an individual. That is really awesome. I feel like this could have been made even stronger if there was a greater emphasis on him. Now, I said in my last review of The Owl House that once the season is wrapped up, I'm going to look back at all of it and see what could have been done in terms of pacing, speed, attention to different characters and to details, character arcs and stuff like that. I really do feel like The Owl House would absolutely benefit, not just from a full season 3, but maybe if it had been 4 seasons. But we'll see how this all plays out in the end. A couple more things that I should probably point out, just in terms of great continuity, but also of possible interest, here is this. So when Hedwig Grey sees that Gus has conjured up a perfect replica, perfect illusion of the graveyard for the illusion, which is like, whoa, he is impressed. He's impressed because he's been trying to find this thing, and Gus has managed to make it there. Furthermore, this just goes to show that Gus truly has incredible power, and by confronting his trauma, by confronting his past and overcoming it, Gus now has access to this kind of power that can be used against their enemies. And it was on such a level that not even the head witch could actually really deal with it. He needed to use special items and all of his power and knowledge just to keep a pace with Gus. That kind of illusionary capabilities, I think, will be very pivotal in facing Emperor Belos on the Day of Unity. And on the note of this fantastically pompous director, Mr. Gray, I really feel like his character and everything that we get to see here in this episode is not just simply to be there to poke fun at bad directors and bad producers for shows and plays and the likes, and how he just wrecks the lives of his various actors. I actually feel, just like with the episodes about books and publishing, that this is meant to be a critique of Disney. We don't know the full story of what's been happening behind closed doors and behind the scenes for the production of The Owl House. But looking at it now, with what we do know about what's been happening within Disney, it's very clear that there's a toxic work environment, and that the people working on The Owl House are not really happy with it. All of the episodes in regards to books and publishing have revealed that they feel that they are being overworked, like they're being forced to do things really fast, and that it has led to a less than stellar product. And here in this episode, we see that they feel like they are being taken advantage of, like they are being abused, that whatever notes are being handed down to them really don't make any sense, and that it's contradictory, and that they're kind of lost in the storm of television production. All of that evidence is right there. And what we do know of Disney television is that's kind of been their MO for a very long time. Disney has never really cared about its shows. Yeah, sure, they put in a little bit, they give them the production money, and they do put up some special events and some trailers for their stuff, but overall, Disney doesn't create the merchandise or the hype or really anything else to support their shows or their showrunners. They just use them. They use them, and then when they're done, they move on to the next thing. And whatever notes they hand to them is just, make it better, make it more Disney, make it on brand. And, well, what is that? That doesn't help out anything. Or then when showrunners actually do what Disney asks of them, Disney's all like, yeah, it wasn't great. Just do something else. You should have read the note within the note. And I really do feel like this episode was a clapback against Disney, saying, you guys wanted a certain show, you could have given us greater direction, but you didn't. You've just been using and abusing us, so we've done the best that we could to make a great show. And honestly, I think that's one of the hallmarks of the Owl House, is that despite all of the neglect from the Disney Corporation, Owl House has done very, very well, at least by as far as the fans are concerned. And as a story writer myself, I just have to say that with everything as it is in terms of production, the Owl House is the best that it could be under the circumstances. And that really is high praise for what this show is and what it could be. It's also a great condemnation towards that filthy Ricky Rat in his House of Mouse. Seriously, Disney, why do you not care about your shows? It's just, this is absolutely perplexing to me. You guys leave so much money on the floor when you could be putting in your pocket. You guys keep on searching for the veins of gold and passing up all the veins of silver surrounding you. Honestly, tap into that, and before you know it, you will have more wealth than you would get finding those veins of gold. But really, that commentary kind of falls into the same vein as to what happens behind the scenes with publishing, what stories get picked up, what don't, and the overall struggle that nearly all creators have when they try to get their works out there with accredited publishers or producers. And that is definitely a conversation to be had, but not right here. I will have that later on. And if you want me to actually go into depth about that, please let me know down in the comment section below, because I'd be happy to dive into just the horrible, twisted world of publishing and producing, and what we can honestly learn from it as novices and as fans, so that way hopefully then we can encourage just better practices and help encourage better stories. But to close here, this episode of the Owl House Labyrinth Runners was a lot of fun. It wasn't maybe the most groundbreaking episode of all time, but it was a very much needed episode in terms of character progression, but also in terms of great setup for the final battle that is to come. I'm just getting more and more excited with each episode for the final confrontation on the Day of Unity. I'm really, really excited for how this is all going to turn out, and I'm really excited to see where all these different characters are going. And again, I just have to say, I'm really happy that I'm getting more of Gus in this season. Gus was one of my favorite characters back in Season 1, and I just really wanted more of him. And I'm happy to see that we get so much great character development with Gus here. And I'm also just really happy that we get to see more of Hunter, and sooner than I was expecting, because this is just really, really good right here. And I'm happy to see that Hunter, again as a character, is just progressing phenomenally. And that he's coming to a point where he can be one of the heroes that is so desperately needed when the fight is taken to Bellows and the Collector directly. This is going to be phenomenal, and I can't wait for it. So, until then, while we're waiting anxiously for the next episode, if you're looking for more writing advice, then please head on over to our other videos here on Camille's Harem, or you can check out our podcast episodes. Links for all of that is down in the description, as well as links taking you to our Pinterest page and more. We would also love for you to join our growing community of novice authors. Thank you for joining us in this adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.